In the small town of General Santos, Philippines, the sun began to hide behind the mountains when Lolo Miguel finished another day of hard work. At 68 years old, his calloused hands still held firm the hoe he used to tend a small rented plot where he grew corn and vegetables. Sweat trickled down his wrinkled face, each drop telling the story of decades of struggle to support his family. The walk to his humble wooden house took about 20 minutes along the dirt road. Miguel felt the weight of age in every step, but he never complained. His wife, Lola Rosa, had passed away 3 years ago, leaving him alone to care for his granddaughter Maria, a 12-year-old girl whose parents died in a traffic accident when she was only 7. A lifetime's savings had been exhausted with Rosa's medical costs during her long battle with cancer. Miguel sold his produce at the local market every weekend, but the money barely covered his own blood pressure medication and keeping Maria in school. The girl was brilliant, always getting the best grades, but Miguel feared he wouldn't be able to pay her school fees much longer. That afternoon, as he walked slowly along the dusty road, Miguel thought about how he could earn extra money. His back ached constantly, and the doctor had said he needed an expensive procedure to treat a heart problem that was getting worse. The old man sighed deeply, looking at the sky that was beginning to darken. Despite all the difficulties, Miguel maintained a generous heart. Throughout his life, he had helped needy neighbors, shared his scarce harvests when someone was hungry, and always offered a helping hand to whoever needed it. He was known in the community as a man of his word, honest and kind, qualities that his late wife had always admired in him. The road was quieter than usual that Tuesday night. Miguel adjusted the old backpack on his shoulders, where he carried his work tools and an almost empty water bottle. The crescent moon partially illuminated the path, creating shadows among the trees that lined the road. The air was heavy with the typical humidity of the region, and in the distance, crickets began their nocturnal symphony. When turning a familiar curve, Miguel noticed a dark silhouette stopped on the shoulder. A car had parked with emergency lights flashing, creating an intermittent glow that cut through the darkness. As he approached, he could see a man crouched beside the vehicle, apparently examining something. The car was modest, a simple black sedan that wouldn't draw attention anywhere. The man seemed to be alone and clearly facing some kind of problem. Miguel could hear murmurs of frustration coming from the direction of the car. Even after an exhausting day of work, and despite his own financial worries, the natural instinct to help others spoke louder. His parents had taught him since childhood that you don't pass by someone in trouble without offering help. Miguel quickened his pace, ignoring the pain in his back and knees. As he approached, he could see that the man wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, and had a cap pulled over his eyes. The man's posture revealed frustration and a certain urgency. The right rear tire was completely flat, and some tools were scattered on the ground beside the car. The only light came from the emergency flares and the man's cell phone flashlight, which clearly wasn't enough for the work that needed to be done. Miguel could feel the stranger's concern radiating in the darkness of the night. Without hesitation, the elderly man approached the man in trouble, ready to offer whatever help he could give, not knowing who this person was or how his life was about to change forever. Miguel approached the broken-down car with careful steps, the intermittent light from the emergency flares illuminating his gentle, worried face. The man crouched beside the vehicle raised his head when he heard the footsteps approaching. Even in the twilight of the night, Miguel could see the expression of relief that took over the stranger's face when he realized someone had stopped to help. The man seemed to be in his 40s, with a robust but compact physical build. There was something familiar about his agile movements and the way he maintained his balance even while crouched, but Miguel couldn't identify what it was. The cap partially covered his face, and the darkness made it difficult to distinguish his features clearly. What Miguel immediately noticed was the man's genuine frustration and his apparent lack of experience with automotive repairs. Without needing many words, Miguel understood the situation. The tire was completely flat, and the tools were scattered in a disorganized way, suggesting that the man had been trying to solve the problem on his own for some time. The elderly man slowly crouched down, his knees creaking with the movement, and began organizing the tools with the experience of someone who had faced this situation many times throughout his life. The man watched Miguel work with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. It was evident that the elderly man knew exactly what he was doing, his hands moving with precision even in the weak light. Miguel began explaining each step of the process, his calm and patient voice cutting through the silence of the night. There was a natural generosity in his gestures, a genuine willingness to help that deeply touched the stranger's heart. As they worked together, a silent connection formed between the two men. The stranger held the cell phone flashlight to illuminate Miguel's work, occasionally offering physical help when requested. There was something comforting about the elderly man's presence, a quiet wisdom that came from decades of life experience. The younger man began to realize that he had found not just someone capable of solving his mechanical problem, but a truly good soul. With precise and experienced movements, Miguel positioned the hydraulic jack under the car and began lifting the vehicle. His hands, though marked by age and hard work, moved with a dexterity that impressed the younger man. Each movement was calculated and efficient, revealing decades of practical experience that no formal education could teach. The elderly man worked with a dedication that went far beyond simple courtesy. While loosening the bolts of the damaged tire, Miguel began talking naturally about his life. He spoke about his granddaughter Maria, about how intelligent she was in school and how she dreamed of becoming a doctor one day. His eyes shone with pride when he mentioned the girl's excellent grades, but a shadow of concern passed over his face when he thought about the costs of education. The younger man listened attentively, touched by the sincerity and genuine love in the elderly man's voice. The stranger began asking questions about Miguel's life, showing an authentic interest that surprised the elderly man. Few cared to listen to the stories of a simple farmer, but this man seemed truly interested. Miguel spoke about his late wife, about the difficult years after her death, and about how he struggled to keep family traditions alive for Maria. There was a touching vulnerability in his words, a rare honesty that created an atmosphere of mutual trust. As they removed the damaged tire and put on the spare, the younger man observed the integrity of Miguel's character in every gesture. The elderly man refused any payment offered, insisting that helping a neighbor in trouble was simply what one did. His hands continued working even when the pain in his back was visible, and he never complained or showed impatience with a task he had voluntarily taken on. The conversation revealed Miguel's simple but profound life philosophy. He believed that small acts of kindness created waves of positivity that eventually returned to bless those who practiced them. It wasn't a belief based on expectations of reward, but rather on a deep understanding that humanity depended on these connections of mutual care. The younger man felt something stir in his heart, a memory of values that sometimes got lost in the modern world. When the work was almost finished, Miguel tightened the last bolts with a strength that still remained in his tired arms. Sweat trickled down his forehead despite the cool night air, and his breathing was a little heavy due to the physical effort. The younger man noticed the elderly man's fatigue and felt a pang of guilt for having allowed someone Miguel's age to do all the heavy work alone. During the final moments of the repair, Miguel casually mentioned his health problems. He spoke about the high blood pressure that worried him, about the chest pains that were becoming more frequent, and about how he didn't have money for the medical treatments recommended by the doctor. There was a quiet resignation in his voice, as if he had accepted that some things in life were beyond his control. He worried more about Maria's future than his own health. The stranger listened to these revelations with growing emotion. Each word from Miguel painted the portrait of a man who had dedicated his entire life to caring for others, often to the detriment of his own needs. The elderly man's generosity wasn't performative or calculated. It was simply part of who he was. Even facing his own financial and health difficulties, Miguel had stopped to help a complete stranger without hesitation. When they finished the work, Miguel firmly refused any form of payment. His words were simple but powerful. Helping one's neighbor wasn't a business, it was a basic human responsibility. The younger man insisted, but Miguel remained inflexible, smiling gently while shaking his head. There was an unshakable dignity in his refusal, an integrity that couldn't be bought or influenced. As they put away the tools and cleaned their hands, the stranger felt he needed to introduce himself properly. He slowly removed his cap and, under the weak light of the emergency flares, revealed his face. Miguel looked at him with curiosity, trying to process something that seemed familiar. Even when the man said his name with simplicity and humility, Miguel took a few seconds to fully understand who he had helped. The gradual realization filled his eyes with surprise and admiration, but also with a deeper understanding that he had encountered not just a celebrity, but a genuinely good person. In the days following the encounter on the road, Manny Pacquiao couldn't get Miguel out of his thoughts. The image of the elderly man working tirelessly to help a stranger, even while facing his own difficulties, had touched something deep in his heart. During his morning training sessions, between rounds on the punching bag, Miguel's gentle voice echoed in his mind, speaking about Maria and her dreams of becoming a doctor. Manny had grown up in the same region, knew intimately the struggle of poor families to survive and prosper. His own childhood had been marked by extreme poverty, selling cigarettes on the streets to help his family. Seeing Miguel, he saw reflections of his own past, but also recognized something that went beyond financial need, a generosity of spirit that couldn't be taught or bought. Discreetly, Manny began making some investigations about Miguel and his situation. He talked to people in the local community, visited the school where Maria studied, and gradually built a complete picture of the family's life. What he discovered only confirmed his first impressions. Miguel was universally respected and loved by everyone who knew him. Teacher after teacher spoke about Maria with admiration, highlighting not only her exceptional intelligence, but also her kindness and humility. The conversations revealed touching details about Miguel's life that the elderly man himself had omitted out of modesty. During the pandemic, when many families were going hungry, Miguel had shared his scarce harvests with needy neighbors. When the typhoon devastated the region 2 years earlier, Miguel had sheltered 3 displaced families in his small house for weeks. Each story confirmed that the generosity demonstrated that night on the road had not been an isolated act, but rather part of the man's fundamental character. Manny also discovered the extent of Miguel's health problems. The local doctor, after some persuasion, confirmed that the elderly man urgently needed a cardiac procedure that would cost an amount equivalent to several years of his agricultural income. Without treatment, Miguel's chances of having a serious heart attack increased significantly with each passing month. The irony of the situation was not lost on Manny. A man who had dedicated his life to caring for others was being prevented from caring for himself due to financial limitations. On a sunny Saturday morning, Miguel was working in his small garden when he heard the sound of vehicles approaching his house. It was unusual to receive visitors, especially in cars that clearly didn't belong to the neighborhood. Maria was playing in the yard when she saw the small convoy stop in front of the wooden gate that protected the family's modest property. The first to get out of the car was Manny, dressed simply but accompanied by some people Miguel didn't recognize. There was also an older man carrying a leather briefcase and a young woman with a warm smile. Miguel wiped his hands on his work shirt and walked slowly toward the gate, his mind racing to understand what could have brought the famous boxer to his humble residence. Manny greeted Miguel with the same respect and human warmth he had shown on the night of their encounter. There was no pomp or circumstance in his presence. He had come as a friend, not as a celebrity making a public appearance. The people accompanying him included a renowned cardiologist from Manila, a lawyer specializing in education, and a social worker who worked with needy families. With a humility that mirrored Miguel's own personality, Manny explained that he couldn't forget the kindness shown that night. He spoke about how the elderly man's selfless gesture had reminded him of life's most important values, values that sometimes got lost in the world of success and fame. There was something deeply personal in the way Manny addressed Miguel, as if he was speaking to a beloved family member. Maria watched everything with wide eyes, trying to process what was happening. She had studied about Manny Pacquiao in school, knew of his importance to the Philippines, but seeing him there, in her house, treating her grandfather with so much respect and affection, was something that surpassed any story she could have read in books. The girl remained quiet, but her eyes sparkled with a mixture of admiration and curiosity about what was to come. What unfolded in the following hours completely changed the course of Miguel and Maria's lives. The cardiologist examined Miguel right there, confirming the urgency of his heart problem, but also assuring that with proper treatment, the elderly man could live many healthy years. Manny had already organized everything. Miguel would be operated on by one of the best medical teams in the Philippines, with all costs covered, including medications and post-operative follow-up. For Maria, Manny had prepared a complete scholarship that would guarantee her education from elementary school through medical college, including housing, meals, and all necessary materials. The education lawyer had prepared all the legal documentation, ensuring that the girl's academic future was completely protected. Additionally, a savings account had been established to cover extra expenses and emergencies. Miguel's house would also be renovated, transforming into a comfortable and safe residence. A small medical clinic would be built on the property, where Miguel could continue helping his community in a different way, connecting needy neighbors with free basic medical services. The irony was beautiful. The man who always cared for others would now have the resources to formalize that care. But perhaps the most touching of all the surprises was the public recognition that Manny organized. A small ceremony at Maria's school would celebrate Miguel as a community hero, establishing a permanent fund in his name to help other families in similar situations. Miguel's generosity would become a legacy that would continue helping people long after he was no longer present. As the sun set on that extraordinary day, Miguel sat on his renovated porch, watching Maria study under the electric light that now properly illuminated her table. Tears rolled silently down his wrinkled face, not tears of sadness, but of gratitude so deep that words couldn't express it. He had stopped to help a stranger on a dark night, never imagining that this simple act of kindness would return to him in such magnificently multiplied form. In the quiet of the Filipino night, Miguel understood a universal truth. When we plant seeds of kindness without expecting anything in return, the universe has mysterious ways of giving us back an abundant harvest. His life had been transformed not by luck or coincidence, but by the eternal power of genuine human compassion. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.